Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. How a community looks has everything to do with its surroundings. Surroundings include mountains, forests, and shorelines, but it's the people who have the greatest impact on a community's surroundings and resources. Earlier this week, University of Vermont Extension hosted a national conference in Burlington that had everything to do with community and surroundings. The conference brought together Extension professionals who work in natural resources with Extension professionals who work in community development. Over 450 participants from around the world were in attendance. Across the Fence spoke with attendees about uniting community development and natural resources.
They brought together over 200.
This is the first joint conference for two national extension associations. One of them is ANRAP, the Association of Natural Resource Extension Professionals, and their focus is on natural resource management. The other association is NACDEP, the National Association of Community Development Extension Professionals, and their focus is on community development. However, as you know, in Vermont, we have a lot of overlap between community development and natural resources. And we have that overlap all over the country, and we really wanted to emphasize the collaboration between these two areas. So that's why these two national associations decided to come together for a joint conference. Collaboration between natural resources and community development extension professionals is critical for the success of our programs and for lasting impacts in communities throughout the country. In Vermont, we feel like we've done a pretty good job as a state of being a leader in bringing those two areas, natural resources and community development, together. So that's why we feel honored to be able to host this conference and bring people from all over the country here to Vermont to showcase what we have going on.
In my own state, in Michigan, especially when we're talking about land use policy, planning and zoning, that the natural resources part of that is really important. You know, as time goes on and there's more landowners and owning smaller parcels of land, that has a big impact on natural resources. And the policies that local communities have really determine how that happens. So that's just one example. Other examples, when we're talking broadly about economic development in a community, there's food and food systems and agriculture parts of that, and of course the natural resource component all works together.
Dean, you know this conference was going to be held in Vermont. What did that mean coming from Michigan to Vermont? What were you expecting?
Well, you know, when you look at economic development, community development, and natural resources, I can't think of other states where those two things come together more integrally. Just being right here in Burlington and seeing the great downtown environment here, surrounded by hills, mountains, forests, and water, it all comes together here. So being from wherever you are and coming to Vermont and seeing those things so tied is really a great thing, and really wonderful to come and see the whole New England environment and meet folks out here.
I'd say within cooperative extension, community development is maybe the least known of the things extension does. You know, we're not out there doing things with cows necessarily or 4-H kids, but a lot of what we do impacts all of those other program areas and really helps integrate those well. What I love about working in this area is that every day is different. You never know what kinds of questions that you're going to get or what challenges a community may be facing or what different leaders within a community have visions to do. And so our job is really to help support them, provide some type of expertise or research base to help them do things the way that we hope will enable them to be most successful. The other thing I really like about what I do is the people. So a community is not just a place with buildings and things like that. It's the people that make the difference. And so getting to meet people from across the state or across the country and work with them is really, it makes life exciting, it makes it fun, and it makes it a joy to do.
How can Vermont serve as an example to these two national organizations?
In Vermont, it's perfectly obvious when things are going well or not going well within a community. And I think it's also really pretty stunning here in Vermont at the way people are so collaborative. We've got this consortium, of different colleges and universities here in the state who are working together. Instead of thinking of each other as competitors, we're trying to find our own niches, again, kind of our own, habitats, in those edges, if you will. And then you've got Vermont Farm to Plate and everything that's happened there, which is just extraordinary. So it's about communication, coordination, collaboration. Some of it's competition, because that's healthy too. But I think very often we're wise enough to let that sit at the bottom and then bubble up as it's needed.
So I want to share why.
You mentioned in your keynote address that community development and natural resources really go hand in hand. How does that work?
With the community development, you can't really have that if you don't have the long-term prospects of what you're doing in terms of natural resource management and conservation. With natural resource and conservation management, it's not something that just happens, within a given context. It really is tied to community development, to what's happening, and community buy-in, because you can do everything you want in terms of trying to think about natural resources management, but if you're not doing it in such a way that it means something to the community by way of education, economic development, really kind of building out the future of the community, then it has very little meaning and very little prospect for success in the end.
What they're bumping up against, obviously, are the distribution channels once they get in.
It's really critical for researchers, for academics like myself. I also happen to be a farmer, but that helps keep me honest some days. But it really is important to do what some have called participatory research, where we're getting out there and we're listening more than we're talking in many cases. And sure, those words of wisdom and our nice sound bites, those can come later. But it's just so critical that we get out there with the listening ear, and that we're talking to not only just farmers, but we're also talking to folks in the middle of the food system, the folks who are doing the processing, the folks who are doing the distribution, the retailing, the wholesaling. Because if we don't really listen to all those players, then we're going to go askew as we try to help others, guide them, connecting them with resources and networks.
What are you hoping the attendees get out of the conference, Lisa?
The short-term goal is connect with colleagues, share what you know and what you have going on, the best of the best, and then take away new ideas for your programs. Longer term, though, one of the things that we want to do with the evaluation is not just do an evaluation immediately following the conference, but 6 months later, check in with our extension colleagues from around the country and say, okay, when you went back to your home state and your home community, what did you do differently? Did you, in fact, bring new ideas back and new connections and change the way that you were doing things and improve your programming on the ground? And how has that impacted people in your communities? Because while these conferences are certainly a lot of fun and they're very inspiring and everybody wants an excuse to come to Vermont and experience Burlington and everything else that Vermont has to offer, we really need to make sure that these conferences have on-the-ground impacts after people return to their home states.
This was the first time ever that the two organizations held their annual conferences together. In addition to the workshops and sessions, attendees also got out on kayak and bike tours and visited the Champlain Islands and Shelburne Farms. Our next story highlights ways that cities and towns can beautify their communities. Volunteers in the UVM Extension Master Gardener program cultivate and care for community gardens. The volunteers provide education and demonstrations that promote successful and environmentally friendly horticulture practices. To learn more, we join Across the Fence's Rebecca Gollin.
It's Saturday morning in Burlington, and residents and tourists alike are flocking to the farmers market. There's local food and craft to satisfy every taste. But just around the corner are some locally grown items that are not for sale.
Everything that you see in the front here are all annuals. In the back are all mostly perennials. So it's a mixture, so we have constant color.
Here at the entrance to Church Street, color abounds.
The zinnias do really well here, so we've kept with that for quite a while. The petunias really do well here. We've tried a few other things, but the petunias seem to do the best. And of course, it's the weather. So we never know what it's going to be. So this year, it's just really exceptional.
While the weather does contribute to this bounty of flowers, the credit for keeping everything looking good goes to volunteers like Jill Lamoth.
We start with planting in the spring, around May, and then from then on, it's deadheading, keeping things cleaned and looking nice.
As a UVM Extension certified master gardener, Lamoth volunteers her time. She's the project leader here at the gardens in front of Burlington City Hall, where she and other volunteers spend their Saturday mornings tending these plants.
It is only a few hours a week, but sometimes that's all you need just to keep things looking nice. I love gardening, so when I walk through here, when we're not working on the gardens, you know, it's kind of nice to say, oh, we worked in those, and it really adds something to the marketplace.
The City Hall project is in coordination with Church Street Marketplace as well as the City of Burlington. And the Master Gardeners there both provide hands-on gardening work outside City Hall, but they also answer questions as they're there. So they're there basically to share the information that they learned during the Extension Master Gardener course with their communities.
Although it does get busy here on Church Street, Lamoth says that she and her colleagues always have time to field those questions from anyone passing by, although she doesn't claim to have all the answers.
If it's something we can't answer, we'll refer them to the table on the other side.
Not only you don't have to bend over, but it actually gets them warmer faster.
On the other side of City Hall, another group of master gardeners is taking questions.
We get a pretty steady stream of people, and the interesting thing to me is they come with many different problems, many different situations. You know, some of them are living in apartments, some of them have big spreads, some of them have very small yards, some of them are vegetables, some of them are only perennials, whatever. And a lot of them are from Vermont, but not every one of them.
It's great. We see, people from actually all over the world, and, a lot of master gardeners from all over the country. They'll say, oh, I'm a master gardener from Virginia, or my husband is one in Washington State. And, we get a lot of local questions. I just got a question from someone in Fire Island, I think that's in Long Island, about what can they do about, the deer eating their plants. We get houseplant questions. You name it, we get it. I get someone brought in 3 apples, and what kind are these? It's like, well, I need to see the tree.
Susan Doran and Michael Rooney are married, and together are the project leaders for the Master Gardeners Information Table at the Farmers Market. Both the City Hall Garden and the Ask a Gardener table are examples of the hundreds of projects Master Gardeners are involved in around the state.
Master Gardeners are doing all kinds of hands-on projects. They work especially with schools, community gardens, libraries, senior centers, parks, and main streets across the state. This last year alone, Master Gardeners donated over 14,000 hours to improving their communities.
Rooney and Dorn were both experienced gardeners when they took the class, but both say they learned a lot.
You learn so much from many of the experts in this state. It's a very low-key course. You get beaucoup of information, and you get to know, not just about your own garden and, vegetables and flowers, but, you get to see, learn about the trees and the wildlife outdoors and what invasives are growing that, you should help not promote, and you maybe, cut down this invasive tree or take out this invasive bush so that you can benefit, the entire environment, even if you don't have a garden.
Been gardening all my life, even done some dairy farming, and came to the point that I thought it would be good to go through the educational process and see what that did. And even after all those years of gardening, I learned more from going through the course than I thought I would.
For this couple, like many others who become master gardeners, just learning is not enough. They also want to share their knowledge with others.
There's something about giving back part of what we got out of the course to other people. And if you don't give it back, they don't get it and they don't pass it on to somebody else.
Teaching their neighbors and communities what it takes to keep plants healthy, these UVM Extension Master Gardeners are hard at work, passing it on. In Burlington, I'm Rebecca Gollin with Across the Fence.
Just gorgeous this time of year. Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you for joining us. That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.